Hello, my fellow Americans, Pennsylvania voters, anybody and everybody that is tuned in to watch the first presidential debate of the 2024 election. Actually, wait, this is the second one, just with a new face. How interesting. I am Toni Shuppe. You're in the Audit the Vote newsroom. Welcome, welcome. I am joined tonight with my partner, Karen Taylor, and our newest friend, not newest, but one of our newer friends, kindred spirits, Miss Sarah McAbee from the state of Tennessee, joining us tonight as we have our watch party. And we are going to get to experience all of this shenanigans together. Aren't you ladies thrilled?
Yes.
So excited.
So say hello. Actually, so if you haven't seen the interview that I did with Sarah a couple weeks ago, it's on our Rumble channel. Our producer, Joel, who is new to our team, is helping us with our social media footprint, has got us back on YouTube. You might be on YouTube watching this just to reach the masses, because if you have been paying attention over the last 4 years, we are in a battle for the hearts and minds of pretty much everybody in the nation. And as much as I'm not a fan of the YouTube, it has a wide reach. And so we're going back to some platforms just to try to reach as many people as possible. And so you might be watching us on YouTube or X or Facebook or, of course, Rumble, which has been our home when YouTube kicked us off a while ago. I probably shouldn't be saying that because then we'll get stuck on some algorithm.
I was going to say, let's see how long that we can last on YouTube.
Yes, let's see how long, because we did get booted not too long ago. So Joel is backstage producing and agreed to do this. We appreciate all of our great volunteers. If you want to see what we're up to election integrity wise, go to auditthevotepA.com and take a look there. We have a lot of different irons in the fire and initiatives. We are not naive to think that they aren't going to try some tricks like they did the last time. And so we are running parallel with folks that are on the ground getting out the vote, which is vital. So we get this all the time. I was going to intro Sarah, so let me do this and then I'll give a little intro to Sarah. We hear this all the time, is why should I vote? They're just the same thing's going to happen. Nothing changed, especially in Pennsylvania. Nothing changed in the landscape of the political arena and election integrity. Why should I vote? And it's because we're not quitting, because that's just quitting and giving up. And I would encourage you just to study a little bit of history, and you'll find out that the founding fathers fought 11 years before bullets started flying to try to negotiate with King George of England to peacefully resolve their differences in the 27 grievances that showed up in the Declaration of Independence that took 11 years to get to. So many of us are battle weary, we're tired, we're worn out. It's been a long 4 years. Never in a million years did I think not only would they steal an election, but they would get away with it. Clearly, that's where we are. We are still standing. An army is building, and we are not going to let them get away with another one. At least that's the goal. And so thank you for tuning in. Sarah, I'll let you just introduce yourself a little bit for people that maybe didn't watch the interview that you and I did. Sarah and I met in early August. Her story blows me away. I'm just going to give her the mic and introduce yourself for, because we've got 21 minutes till showtime.
I'm just honored to be here. My name is Sarah McAbee. My husband is Ronald Colton McAbee. He is a January 6th defendant that is currently serving out a 70-month prison sentence for airing his grievances with his government on January 6th, while helping an officer that was in distress and trying to save the life of fellow protester Roseanne Boylan. The reason that I continue to get out and speak is because the reason that my husband went to January 6th was because our election was stolen. The real insurrection happened November 3rd of 2020. And here we sit almost 4 years later in the same situation, if not a worse situation than what we have been in. And so as we were talking behind stage, it's so important to go out and vote, not only to go out and vote, but to talk to your neighbors about what's going on and making sure that they are registered to vote, to make sure that their voices are heard, because that's the duty that we have as an American citizen. As much as I don't want to go and vote because of how my federal government has treated my husband and myself, I know it's our duty as an American citizen, because there's so many countries around the world that it just doesn't matter. Tyranny runs. And I feel like this is a do or die moment for American history, that we have to go. Not only do we have to walk to the ballot box on November 5th, but we have to do our duty in holding these individuals accountable to ensure that they don't steal the election. Because on one hand, yes, too big to rig, but what we have seen is he had 104 million votes last year, and that didn't, in 2020, and that just didn't seem to matter. And so we have to make sure that they are not doing the nefarious things that they did in 2020 on a small scale level, all the way up to a higher end level. And everybody has a part in this journey. And you just have to figure out what it is. I mean, we're 55, 56 days away from the most important election in American history in my book.
Literally, I could not agree more with that, Sarah. Thank you. Like literally her livelihood. So if you're on the fence at all, somehow you're watching this and you don't like either candidate because they're both old and Trump doesn't say the right things and Kamala's a cackling whatever, and you just don't know what to do. Sarah is a perfect example of why you need to vote for President Trump. Because, and this isn't Audit the Vote, we're a nonprofit. She has her own nonprofit. This is just Toni Shuppe speaking as a person right now. Is that whether or not she sees her husband literally rides on who ends up in the White House. He's been wrongfully accused, wrongfully convicted. He's in jail. She hasn't seen him since August of 2021. Is that right?
I've seen him, but it's been less than a dozen times in 3 years.
And it's been behind a plate glass, not like being able to be a family in 3 years. And two, if he is forced to complete the rest of his totally sham of a sentence because he did not do the crimes that he's been convicted of, and there's plenty of evidence to prove that, go back and watch the interview that I did with her. It will knock your socks off. If you need encouraged or motivated, it is definitely the medicine for you. If you need a reason to put all those things aside and pick the right person, think of someone like Sarah, who's literally not going to see her husband, who did nothing wrong, was a former law enforcement officer or was law enforcement, and is being completely railroaded by a very corrupt regime, federal government. And if they're allowed to steal another election, she won't see him for 2 more years. So it's just food for thought from one friend to another. There's so much more riding on this election than our grocery prices coming down, which we desperately need, than our gas prices coming down, which we desperately need, than the border closing so we're not infested with terrorists. There's so much more than those very important issues. And she puts a face to that and makes it really real for me. So food for thought there. Karen, why don't you do a quick intro? Let's see, it's 8:43. We have, I know Joel has the actual pre-game on mainstream stuff we were going to pull up, but I figured you guys would maybe benefit a little more from hearing some real people who are on the ground fighting and have been for years and actually have a love for our country instead of the talking heads that are paid millions of dollars that are just reading from a teleprompter. And so Karen's been on the ground doing great work with hand counting, getting people trained, because our cause at Audit the Vote is to maximize transparency in our vote counting and our vote reporting process. We want safe and secure elections that are efficient and effective. But the biggest problem that we see on the ground from 2020 is Americans don't trust the system. And it doesn't really matter who wins or loses at the end of the day when people don't have confidence that the outcome is legitimate. And so we are pivoting to try to get people trained, eventually move completely away from electronic voting machines, only because we can't see what's going on. When you scan your ballot into a tabulator in Pennsylvania, there is no way for you to know that it was awarded to the candidate that you chose on that piece of paper. And for that reason, there's no transparency in the vote counting process. The reporting process is a whole nother deal. But as an effort towards that end, Karen's been traveling around different counties and doing hand count training. So I'll have her talk for a second and maybe share what she's got coming up with Cause of America, where you can get trained. If you have missed all the other trainings that we've done in person or virtual, there's going to be another opportunity for you to see what she's been doing on a national scale. So I'm going to move her into the spot.
Yeah. Well, hi, everyone. Hand counting, it's imperative. We saw what happened in Northampton County, where they admitted that ES&S programmed the machines wrong. So if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what would, because if they can program the machines to flip Superior Court retention race decision, what else can they program these machines to do? So hand counting is imperative. I personally have trained almost 300 people now between virtual and in-person hand counting. And my coworker from Cause of America, Linda Rance from Missouri, was the one who actually created this method. She created a 300-page e-manual actually on hand counting. It's quite impressive. I don't know if I would have the patience to do that, but the section 5, actually, it's pretty impressive. She actually outlines the exact way to do it where it's completely transparent. There's full chain of custody. And so on September 22nd, she's actually going to be doing a live Train the Trainers class. That's what she calls it. And it's basically to train the average day person on how to go out and be, as Rick Green says, a force multiplier and train other people on how to train hand counting. And so I, along with my coworker Melody, will be kind of the commentators on Frank's speech. It will be live on Rumble and X and YouTube, as well as Frank's speech. Don't be surprised if Mike Lindell pops in too, because, you know, it's his network. So if he does, that'll be a lot of fun. But I think this is going to be something that really is going to be the future of our election process. You know, in 2016, one side claimed that the election was stolen. In 2020, you know, the other people claimed that it was stolen. And if we cannot get trust in our electoral process in 2024, regardless of the outcome, you're going to have people claiming that it was stolen. And so this is the best way for us really to get out there and have transparency to where people can actually trust the process, regardless of the outcome, if they agree with it or not. So come join us. We're going to have a lot of fun.
So they go to, do they have to register for this at causeofamerica.org?
No, it will be live on Frank's speech. You can just come on in. You can go to causeofamerica.org, and the second tab on the left says Hand Counting Simplified. So you can click on there and get all the handouts and everything you're going to need. There will be some more emails and stuff going out with specific details on this. So pay attention to Frank's speech. And if you're not already on the email list for Cause of America, you can go to causeofamerica.org. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Cool. I'm looking forward to it. And it's incredibly educational. And it also, I think, transcends November 5th. Not to minimize how important this election is, but for the sake of posterity, we need to get back to a hand counting process moving forward. And it's not going to happen as quickly as any of us really wanted it to. Audit the Vote is specifically advocating for a hand count of even just the presidential race. We'll be happy with that if Pennsylvania counties agree to do that before they certify the election, just to reassure the public that whoever ends up being quote unquote chosen is the one that actually got the most votes. And just like Karen said, to reiterate, 2016 Hillary Clinton supporters screamed it was stolen. 2020, of course, Donald Trump supporters screamed it was stolen. We don't want another 4 years of that. We're concerned that would lead to a civil war, which nobody really wants. We want to encourage civil discourse before civil war and increase the transparency. So if that is something that you support and you live in Pennsylvania, go to our website, click on Hand Count Initiative, and you can sign the petition, because what we need to be able to do is show our local officials that people, their own constituents in their backyard, actually support this effort. My county personally, I've been involved. I did a presentation in front of my county commissioners in Beaver County, Pennsylvania, and showed them why we needed to go back to hand counting. And less than a week after that presentation, even though we showed the county that we could save them almost $300,000 a year if they chucked the machines and went to hand counting paper ballots, they still went and renewed the contract with the voting machines less than a week after our presentation. So needless to say, we're stubborn little buggers. We're not going anywhere anytime soon. And so now we're building ground support. And I think our volunteers on the ground with our task force have collected almost 500 signatures just in the last couple weeks by going to some fairs and asking people, hey, would you support this effort? Our original petition for an audit of the 2020 election that was launched in February of 2021 in Beaver County, we got 1,200 signatures just from Beaver County. The petition total had 120,000 signatures on it in just a handful of months. But our county commissioners did not think that 1,200 was enough of a dent for them to actually listen to us. So we're going to continue to build our grassroots army and continue to make our grievances heard and our voices heard. And then we're heading back to a county commissioner meeting on September the 25th. And you are invited, if you're in the area in Beaver County and want to support us and make your concerns about the election heard. We're going to a county commissioner meeting at 10 a.m. on September the 25th. And we're going to bring the signatures that we get and say to them, here's how many people just in the last few weeks are concerned in Beaver County about this and are pushing for hand counts. So we're not necessarily very popular in our courthouse or with our local elected officials, but last I checked, losing the republic is not a popularity contest. It's a republic if we can keep it, which we did not. And we've got to show them that, in fact, we are the ones that put them there and we pay their paychecks. And with all due respect, they will listen to us because we are the boss. And it's time we start to assert that. 10 minutes left. Joel, do you want to pull in? Is there anything else that you ladies have on your heart that you want to share before we just start pulling in the live feed of whatever the talking heads are doing and have some fun kind of laughing and making fun of them and just seeing how this is going to go? Anything you guys want to share?
No, I'm excited to jump in.
Good.
I am too. I think this is going to be A fun night. You know, we should have made bingo cards. That's something we didn't do. We should have made bingo cards for tonight.
Yes, we should have.
Very good.
Dang.
Okay, Joel is telling me in the chat that he has some trailers ready. So, if we've got 9 minutes, rather than listening to the talking heads, the first thing, a lot of people in the chat are saying that they are praying for President Trump and they're praying for our country. And so I think let's take like 30 seconds and say a quick prayer together. And then we'll talk about some movies that are coming up, because I think there's more value in that than listening to the talking heads. Father, we come to you in the name of Jesus. We give you all honor, glory, thanksgiving, and praise. Father, we know that your hand is all over this nation. And we just ask that you lift up the good and that the evil is exposed in tonight's debate, that your hand is completely over it, and that folks on the side of good are protected and covered by the blood of Jesus from the top of their head to the tip of their toes, and folks that are on the side of evil will be exposed. And the right people are going to get in office in November to carry the republic forth so that we can save it and restore it, all for your honor and your glory, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So now that we've said that prayer, we've got 8 minutes left. There are some really good movies coming up that Sarah and I have been chatting a little bit about back and forth. Two of them she recently sent to me. Sarah, I don't want to screw it up, so why don't you talk about them, and then we'll let Joel play a couple of trailers.
Yeah, so it's called What is Treason? And it is going to expose the federal government for what they are doing, not only at our southern border, but what's happening in our inner cities, what's happening with our elections, what is happening with January 6th defendants. I am honored to be interviewed on the second part of the documentary. They have gathered so much information that they ended up breaking the documentary into 2 parts. And the first part is What is Treason Trafficked? And it talks about our southern border, how almost 500,000 children have come across our border in the last 4 years. And then the second part of the documentary is going to be called Invaded. And that's the one that goes into really all the other corruption that's going on within our federal government. I have never seen a documentary like this, that it is real people exposing the federal government for what they have witnessed or what they have gone through. And the filmmaker, Ryan Matta, and JJ Carroll. JJ is a 24-year Border Patrol agent and has never seen the country at its current state. And so they have come together and made something that, in my opinion, is going to blow all other documentaries out of the water.
Wow. Joel, you got the trailer? Cue it up. Let's play it. But it's 2 separate ones, right, Sarah?
Yes, so I don't know the trailer that's going to be played if it's both of them, but there will be 2 documentaries.
Administration are traitors, and they have committed treason against America. I only have one question for you, but before I ask that question, I want to take you back in time. We're going to transport everyone back to January 19th, 2021, the day before Joe Biden takes office. And I'm going to stand before you, and I'm going to say I came from the future 4 years from now. And I'm going to tell you what this man's going to do. First day in office, he is going to sign 94 executive orders to eviscerate every immigration policy Donald J. Trump has put into effect. He will take a border that was the most secure border in American history and turn it on its head. Within 4 years, Joe Biden will have arrested over 12 million people. 250,000 of them will be special interest aliens, which in other words, in layman's terms, terrorists. They'll be arrested and released. Since the time he's become president in the 4 years, Joe Biden has created the world's largest child sex trafficking organization in modern history. He will have arrested and released over 500,000 unaccompanied alien children called UACs. Their ages are from infancy to 17 years old. They just released them to a nation that is the #1 consumer of child pornography. Connect the dots. Our government is destroying America from within. I will not stand by and allow it to happen. That's why I'm going to go to across the nation, and I'm going to show you the manifestation of this treason. You're going to see crime that you can't even fathom. You're going to see a degradation of the social benefits and welfare for American citizens being ripped from them and given to illegal aliens. You're going to see cities like Chicago, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, and you're going to see them divert tens of millions of dollars. In New York City, they're going to divert almost $12 billion for illegal aliens. The city of Chicago has brought to its knees social welfare, murder, crime. You can imagine hundreds of millions of dollars for illegal aliens, and I don't care about my residents. They can all pound sand. We are living in a world where our government hates us, and I am going to go on a journey, and I am going to prove it to you. And the question I have after all of this has been done, if everything I tell you is the truth, and it is, Do you call Joe Biden a patriot or a traitor?
Wow. Holy cow. Oh my gosh. Okay. So Joel has it up there. Thank you for that. You're doing a killer job. This is treason.com. Barb's asking, Sarah, who's narrating that? Is that one of the names you mentioned?
Yeah, that's JJ Carroll. That is the Border Patrol agent of 24 years.
Holy mackerel. This is treason.com. We will at Audit the Vote and maybe even Patriot Academy be having some watch parties for stuff like that. Oh my Lord. I'm going to want to run through a wall before this is all said and done tonight. We've got 2 minutes. We're going to bring in the actual TV and I'm going to shut up and I know, Rachel, right? Like, whoa, talk about a kick in the gut. Anyway, the mainstream is not talking about any of this. And so we need to, as part of our mission at Patriot Academy, is to replace the culture, the cultural rot that is taken over with our entertainment industry and all of that stuff with truth and with things that are actually happening. And I used to be the biggest movie buff on the planet. I loved romantic comedies. I've seen them all. I could act many of them out. And after 2020, I started doing some digging and finding out Hollywood. I knew it was bad, but I didn't realize that it was like, potentially human cannibalism bad. So I put all that aside and now I'm a documentary junkie and that's what is entertaining in our house. And I would encourage you to do the same. Also, I also know that all of these people have causes that you're going to see things flashed across the bottom of the screen to donate, to give, send, go. You can give to us. You can give to Sarah's nonprofit. We're going to blast that stuff across the TV. And I get that everybody's got their hand out and groceries are more expensive than they've ever been. And gas is almost unaffordable. But here's what I would ask you to do is that whatever, you can't give to everything. None of us really can unless we're independently wealthy. So if Elon Musk is getting wind of this, $1 million goes into both of our accounts, we would be like forever grateful for that. But if you don't have Elon Musk money, you have to designate it somewhere. And my suggestion is that you pray about it. And where is your heart? What tugs at your heart the most? The causes typically that tug at my heart the most, that's how I know where I'm supposed to give. So as you see all this, don't be compelled by the emotion to just like drain your bank account and give to everything, because realistically you can't. You have to feed your family and put a roof over your head first. But pray to the Lord and say, where are you guiding me to give? What is passionate in your heart? Because you're going to see a lot of that. I mean, that movie is just one of many of the causes. It's gut wrenching. I would play, maybe when the debate's done, we'll play the other trailer, the Seth Gruber movie that if you don't know Seth Gruber, look him up, Gruber. He is a good voice in the pro-life movement, been around a long time. I just got introduced to him within the last couple of weeks. He's got a movie coming out called The 1916 Project, where he dissects the real history behind Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood. That's going to be an incredible film as well. So there's plenty of real truthful entertainment for us to get filled up on, that we don't have to soak in the mainstream media garbage any longer. You just have to know where to look and where to find it. So, okay, the live stream is still a couple of minutes behind, so they're not anywhere near starting, but it is 8:59 and I certainly don't want to miss a second of this. I'm looking forward to experiencing it with two incredible patriots that are in this fight in a very big way. And so Joel, if you want to go ahead and pull it in, I'll let you decide, or should we just keep chatting? Let's see where we're at. Oh, we're watching it on ABC. Blech.
I'll admit it was kind of fun to watch in 2016 Trump go over on CNN. So,
we were together on that, weren't we? We were, yes. It was after one of our and God.
I mean, it's kind of funny when, the mainstream, as far as Audit the Vote, has thrown us under the bus and called us every crazy psycho name possible and made us seem like crazy lunatics. But, it is kind of funny to watch the mainstream media put this on here, and I'm curious to see what their thoughts is and how they're going to try and spin it, because they seem to do that a lot.
Yeah. So no, Joel, the audio is actually not coming through, but that's okay because I don't really want to listen to the $1 million talking heads. I'd rather listen to us and patriots on the ground. But if you want to play with it to make sure that the audio we're able to get it at some point, and we're watching it on ABC, everybody, because that's the hosting source. So we're getting the direct source, which I guess we have to deal with. Yeah, when President Trump won in 2016, Karen and I were at a restaurant. It was a bar/restaurant that we would go to on Tuesday nights. And I remember the waitress asking us if we wanted to change the channel. And of course, my husband, who's incredibly brutal, he's the total opposite of me, very chill, very low key, but very brutal, zero empathy. He doesn't care, and I love him anyway. Says, nope, I want to watch them lose on their own turf. And so we watched on CNN where they had to give it to him. And I had no clue the real victory behind that at the time. You know, I was asleep at the wheel of all things political. I just voted my values and my faith, which was not to kill babies. So that's why I did not vote for Hillary Clinton. But 1916 Project, Nikki, is the name of it. It's flip-flops the 1619 Project, which is the New York Times twist on history. So to paint America as a racist nation is actually the 1916 Project. And there's significance in the date too, which Seth goes through. Oh, here we go. There's significance in that date, but we'll talk more about it. We'll maybe play the trailer when it's done. But if Joel gets the sound, I'm going to shut up because here we are. Get your popcorn. Is anybody? I should have made popcorn. I don't have popcorn.
I have popcorn. I can go make some.
I just text my husband and tell him to bring me some popcorn. Bring me some popcorn.
I don't know, because if I throw it, I'm going to make a mess in here.
Oh, that's true.
Probably start throwing it at the camera.
That is true. Joel's messing with the sound. So if you're out there watching it, just bear with us. Bear with us as we get the sound figured out here.
I mean, I'll tell you, I have a feeling something's got to drop tonight. Kamala's probably going to drop some big bomb or something. Because otherwise, you know, she hasn't been in front of the media since she was named by the media the new candidate. So something's got to happen big tonight.
Clarifications or responses.
Oh, there it is.
Only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for two candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's
illegitimate Vice President Harris, by the way, just FYI. Right. Illegitimate.
And President Donald Trump.
Is it this quiet, Joel? There's no music. Oh, look at it.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America.
Not directly answering the question, by the way.
I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy.
Which is, you didn't answer the question. You didn't answer the question.
We have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time.
What's your salary?
So
Why do you
those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children.
This is going to be so
passion,
oh my gosh.
One of them is small business. I was actually, my mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy.
Only if they're by illegals.
My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month.
Except for they want to do a 43% corporate
tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First
Someone
of all,
give
I
that
have
girl a
no
glass of
sales
water.
tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world.
That's right.
And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation has, which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently.
You're eating
These
your
are the
pets.
people
Just
that
saying.
she and Biden led into our
The
country.
cats.
And
Hide
they're
your cats. Hide
destroying
your
our
wife.
country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
There it is.
You're talking
What
about
we have done
democracy?
is clean up Donald
Sorry.
Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling. What
You
you're
are a
going to hear
career
tonight is a
politician.
detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris. I'll
preach.
respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy. And the best economist in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy.
Goldman
What
Sachs,
the
big
Wharton School
business.
has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look
Oh, honey, we're
at
already
where we
there.
are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the
Thank
top
you. She
professors,
still hasn't talked
think
about
my
her
plan
plan.
is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan.
She
It's a
doesn't
plan
have
that's going
one.
to
It's his
I know.
plan. She steals his
our value
policies.
as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She
That's
copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan.
I'm
She
gonna turn
doesn't
the
have
air
a plan.
conditioner on. I can't do
Mr.
it.
President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else.
Amen.
The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military.
Other countries.
Basically sold us out. When a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
Oh, really now?
Let's talk about the Green
They
New
bought
Deal.
the chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But If she ever got elected, she'd change it.
I got
And
one there. I'll
it
send
will
you.
be the
that I
end
got
of our
from him.
country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21
I'm sure
million
we're already
people, not
kicked
the
off.
15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you
Hide
often
your pen.
touted
There we
that you were
go.
able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American
right.
history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times.
It's a moral issue, not a political
why
issue.
should they
but that's
trust
Well,
you?
the
right.
reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, is doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's an execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years, they've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions, very important.
People would be really sick if they knew it was a government setup from the very beginning.
And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote.
That's where it should belong to begin with.
Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal. Much
They probably
more
stole it.
I would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government.
That's right.
I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact.
All right, we got to try to pull that up.
Fact
Fact check.
Donald Trump
Fact check that.
hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life.
No, she wants to, though.
Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government and Donald Trump certainly should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to
miscarriage is
jail,
not abortion,
and she's
honey.
bleeding out in a car in the parking lot.
I know, I've
He
had
didn't
one.
want that.
Not
Her husband
abortion.
didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But
Never gonna happen.
understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he
Can't
will
do that
sign a
without the
national
legislative
abortion
branch,
ban.
honey.
Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should
Give me a
not be
break,
made
Kamala.
Thank you,
Miscarriage is
Vice
not
President
abortion.
Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What
That's
she
where it
says
belongs.
is an
I got the
absolute
fact
lie.
check up. Don't worry,
And
we'll
as
share
far
it when they
as
go to break.
abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it
Well,
came
I
to your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one,
Do
she
it.
said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote.
That's right.
Politics is
Especially now
dirty.
with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of when they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe.
That's right.
Student loans. And then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea and how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free, but they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years, they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in
I'm a slapper in the
America
face. I can't help myself.
is a woman carrying a
said
pregnancy
it out loud.
to
You're not
term
answering the question?
and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans.
You're a murderer.
Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments.
The emotional, here it comes.
Oh,
Emotional self.
Working women who are working one or two jobs, who can barely
Nikki,
afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs.
Emotions.
Barely can afford to do it. And what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. And that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Then why do you
Vice President
care?
Harris,
Excuse me,
Not
I have to
freedom, it's
respond.
murder.
What do you
Another
care?
lie. Another lie.
What does it matter?
I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that?
I pulled it
Why
up in
don't
the
you answer
law.
that
Why
question?
don't you
That's
answer
the
the
problem.
question? Would you
Because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question. Would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month.
not true.
And
Yes.
probably
Yes, it is
after
true. I
birth.
have it.
Just look at the governor,
Oh,
former governor
well, you
of
can
Virginia.
just-
The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country.
Yeah, Kamala,
Vice President
let's talk
Harris,
about
you were
that,
tasked by
Mr.
President
Ms.
Biden
Border
with getting
Czar.
to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States.
Oh my
I know
gosh,
there are
you're
so
telling me
many
like she
families
cares.
watching tonight who have been personally affected
Emotion.
by the surge of
Here we go.
fentanyl in our
When a
country.
politician is backed
That
into a
bill
corner,
would have
they
put
get
more
emotional. They pull out
resources to
emotional
allow
stories.
us
Don't
to
fall for it.
prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because
Yes,
it's a
please.
really interesting thing to watch.
Yes, they should.
You will see during the course of his rallies,
Absolutely.
he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of
Oh, you're one
exhaustion
to
and
talk.
boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk
Oh, and
about
they get shot
is
at
you.
too.
You will not hear him
Because of
talk
people like
about
you.
your needs, your dreams, and your
What a
desires.
liar.
And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually
really?
puts you first. And I pledge to you that I will.
Vice
Hey,
President
Kamala,
Harris,
why
thank
don't
you.
you
President
take your
Trump,
own
on that point, I want to get your
invitation?
Well, I
response.
would like
Career
to respond.
Let me just
politician
ask, though,
pile of
why
trash.
did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there.
Facts.
And then showing them in a
100%
different light.
facts.
So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what subject, what they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live
Yes,
there.
they are.
And this is what's happening in our country. And it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country. And if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
Preach.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
All
I've
this,
seen people on television.
let me just say here, this is
the people on television say
clear-
my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
But
television.
the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by
Here
the
it is.
people that went there.
Love it.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no
Oh,
evidence of
okay.
that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what
Because
you
yeah, all
Oh my,
elected
talk about
officials-
extreme. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John
Exactly.
McCain,
We don't want that.
including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney.
Ooh,
Oh, 'cause
And
they're real good
if you wanna
Republicans.
know the
right.
inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him.
Hey, why don't you ask your
Former
vice
chief
president's
of
family
four-star
why they're
general.
endorsing Trump?
Said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States.
Woo! Name
His
the five
former
freedoms.
national
Can't do it.
security
Guaranteed.
advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense
Oh my God,
has
she's
said the
probably never read
nation, the republic, would
God.
never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump will give you a quick
very
minute to
crystal.
respond.
It is clear.
Thank you. Because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those
That's
top
right.
people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper, he was no good, I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book, because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they? But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far.
Yes, he did.
In fact, I got more votes than any sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier. So let's
they
get
not
back
do
to your
commercials?
deportation proposal that
I
the
don't
vice
think so.
president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S.
With local
military.
police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
It is much higher because
You're
of them.
wondering.
They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's
Look at her.
not
What's she
worth it.
looking at?
Because
Somebody sent her
they're
messages.
destroying the fabric
Yeah,
of
I
our
agree,
country
Rachel. What is
by
she
what
doing?
they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof, despite their fraudulent statements that they made. Crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
He's
President
getting
Trump, as you
feisty.
know, the
I
FBI
like it.
says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst
Amen.
crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich
Oh, here we go.
coming from someone who has been
Where's the hand?
prosecuted for
Your
national
your federal
security
government.
crimes, economic crimes, election interference,
Ooh!
has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45
He's not the former vice
agents
president, though.
on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts.
Oh,
Let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President
Right.
Harris, thank you.
from
Excuse
you.
me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election.
President
They're
Trump.
fake cases.
President
Yes,
Trump,
I did.
thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political
She's an
enemies.
Idiot. Lord forgive me.
Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump
How
were
do you
back
maintain
in the
your
White
Christian
House
faith through
with
this? I
no
want to punch her in the throat.
guardrails. Because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
Vice President
stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
I
Vice
don't condone
President
violence,
Harris, in your
but I want to
last
slap her in
run
the
for
face.
president,
Can't help it.
This is the one that weaponized.
He has so
not
much
me.
disdain for the
She
military.
weaponized.
That's why
I
he met with
probably
those
took a
13
bullet
family
to the
members and
head
he didn't.
because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a
President
fake
Trump.
Russia
you.
investigation
We do have a lot to
that
get.
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
Wow.
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act.
Wait a minute. She
which
just said she
opened
hasn't
new
done it as the
leases
Vice
for
President, but
fracking.
then she said she had no
My
authority as the
position
Vice
is
President.
that we have got to invest in diverse sources
How
of
much she
energy
knows
so
about
we
her
reduce
position.
our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager.
Here come the emotions.
The
Watch it.
values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times,
Sleazy salesman.
is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes.
Really?
increase
That's why
by 3
houses
million
are
homes
like
by the end of my first
$500,000
term.
right now?
My
Yeah,
work
okay.
that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather.
Well, I
And
knew
my
it.
focus
There it
then
is.
on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on longstanding work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well,
response?
first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
Ooh.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail.
Yes,
she did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania.
Preach.
If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish one thing, so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead. Fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400,
President
500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment,
to.
as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days.
Ugh.
And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is
Oh,
a
Lord.
cornerstone of our democracy and the role of a
Our
president
democracy.
in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said
Oh,
you would
Sarah,
be
here it
right
comes.
there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer.
Keep going.
That should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America, they're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle, they took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me
They're
just
not.
ask
You might ask her that.
I want to
but-
see
You were
that
the
paper
president.
that's in
You were
front of her.
watching
She
it
keeps
unfold on
writing on.
television. It's a very
I'm gonna
simple
need a straight
question
jacket.
as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in
Good.
writing, as you
Don't
know.
say you regret it.
I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers.
Preach.
They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
Oh, this ought to be good.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th.
Were ya?
I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there.
So was I.
And on that
It was
day,
all peaceful.
the
You were a long
president of
stack
the
of
United
crap.
States incited a violent mob
Oh,
to attack our nation's capital,
Oh,
to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law
the
enforcement
People's
officers were injured,
Capital.
oh God,
and some died.
She's a lying witch.
And understand, the
None died.
former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation
Joel, put Sarah's
Let's
slide up
remember
there so we can
Charlottesville,
counter this garbage.
where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And
Me
what
too,
did
Jess.
the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by.
Oh my
So
God.
for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was,
Sarah, be ready to counter this crap
I say
when it's
we don't
over.
have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time
Really?
to
That's
turn
why
the
you're doing
page.
segregation because you
And
don't
if
want to
that
go
was
back?
a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand
Oh my
for
God.
country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule
Constitutional
of law,
Republic. Thank you.
and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about
keep myself on
attacking the
mute.
foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome.
We're
And
not
be clear
democracy.
on that point. Donald
We're
Trump, the
so
candidate,
American.
has said in this election there will be a bloodbath. if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this, you talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The president of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. Many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short. Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I said that sarcastically. You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about it. An election is fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls. And we have to have it. We have to have borders and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as a clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And said
that's right. No evidentiary
phase. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people.
No,
so let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election.
Oh,
I'm
really?
gonna
When
tell
was it
you
free and
that
fair?
I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk
Well,
in
she's a
this
slut,
way
so if that's
in a
the direction
presidential
we're going,
debate and
then
deny
okay.
what over and over again are
Lord,
court
I'll ask
cases you
for
have
forgiveness tomorrow.
lost
The gloves
because
are off.
you did in fact lose that election.
No,
It leads one to believe that perhaps
Kamala, you want to
we
look
do
at
not
all
have
of our
in the
evidence?
candidate to my right the
I'll show you
temperament
all of our evidence.
or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there.
Seriously,
But
Anthony.
when she mentions about
Game over.
Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party.
Slut.
She hates Israel.
Said it
If
out
she's
loud.
president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice
55
President Harris,
days,
he says
people.
you hate Israel.
That's
55 days.
absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the
You're a
Israeli people.
politician.
He knows that. He's
Oh.
trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy.
Punch
It is
her
well
in the
known
throat.
that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It
Says
is
the
well
person who's
known he
endorsed by Putin.
exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un.
Disgusting political
And it
sin.
is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And
That's
that
why
is
Putin
why
endorsed you, Kamala.
so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have
I
a
love
lot of
this man.
issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Woo! Sarah, you've been so calm.
Sarah, seriously, I'm like a
I
cartoon.
don't know how you're doing it.
We couldn't be complete. We're total opposites. I love her. Oh my gosh, I feel like a human cartoon. Sarah, like just
I live this every day, though. I mean, every day the left attacks us for January 6th. So, I mean, none of what I am hearing is new to me or shocking to me, other than she continues to lie on national stage when people can literally, they have phones at their fingertips that they can fact check this stuff. They can pull up another tab and fact check that she is continually lying And that's all they have ever had a stance on running. We talk about the same things over and over again. We're talking about fracking, we're talking about the border, we're talking about January 6th, and we're talking about the Middle East. That's it. That's what we talked about 2 months ago when Biden, and you can tell I can guarantee she had these questions beforehand.
Absolutely.
And all she's trying to do is become famous and making herself gifts by the way that she's responding to him. And somebody needs to give that woman a glass of water because she seems very parched, and that is so annoying.
Spit some facts on what your husband experienced on that day to counteract the garbage that she spewed.
Yeah, you know, they want to keep saying that 140 officers were injured. Well, how about we talk about the numerous, probably more than that, January 6 defendants that were injured by Capitol and Metropolitan police officers, and that they should have never been put in that position because the National Guard should have been there, 10,000 troops. And the only time that Nancy Pelosi wanted it is she called down when it was lunchtime, and she wanted to give, I'm not joking you, it is in Kash Patel's book, Government Gangsters. She called down and said, where is the National Guard? I need them here. Roll the tanks down Pennsylvania Avenue because I need to feed my congressional members. She didn't care about the American citizen. She didn't care about anything. She cared about opening the lunchroom for the congressional members to eat lunch. If you look at January 6th for a whole, when chaos broke out at the Capitol, they had already gone through Alaska, they had already gone through Alabama, and they were working their way through Arizona. Maricopa County was on the floor, and that's when chaos broke out, and that's when they had to adjourn the session until later. And thank God for a Capitol police officer who was ignored on his radio multiple times, trying to get the House, trying to get them out of the chambers of the House so another murder like Ashley Babbitt would not have happened. Yet he didn't get, it was radio silence for Yogananda Pittman. He was getting nothing from the command center. And so he decided to take a leap of faith and get the House members out of there. Thank God, because they have shoot to kill orders when it comes to protecting their congressional members. And so for her to sit there and talk about the 140 officers, and then she said some that died later. Yes, Officer Sicknick died on January 7th because of negligence on his own department's half. And they didn't want to talk about the suicides afterwards. Those are suicides. There's suicides in law enforcement every single day that they don't want to talk about. Yet today, the FBI went and did pre-dawn raids on American citizens' houses, and there's almost 1,500 January 6 defendants, 250 of them probably listening to this presidential debate on a radio because they're sitting in prison right now.
Thank you, Sarah, for letting it rip. Thank you for your bravery. This makes me sick to my stomach, but you got to hear this because they're lying. She's lying through her teeth. And I'm going to do my best not to call her a slut and a witch the rest of the time, but it's not easy. She's lying. And this is living proof. If you're watching this and not sure who to vote for, please vote for this woman to get back with her husband. A vote for President Trump.
Though, like you said, Sarah, I totally agree. She had to have had these questions beforehand, regardless if they said she didn't, because you notice she's calm, collected, right? She's getting to the point. She's trying to get a rise out of Trump, which she's doing, right? So if you're the layman person, you're watching this, you haven't really paid attention. She seems calm and collected. And so that's why it's important for, people to actually talk about what's really going on, right? She talked about the election and how he's a sore loser. And he's not wrong in saying that, everything was thrown out from standing. But if you haven't been living in it, like Toni and I have for the last 4 years, we've been stuck in an echo chamber because we haven't been able to get out the truth. So if you know the truth, right, if you're one of the people who have been living in it or you follow us, make sure you get that out because people need to see the truth. They need to see the canvassing that we've done. They need all the stuff that we have uncovered that nobody in government wants to look at.
Nope. Total lies. And that's why I get like my blood pressure goes up when they start talking about the fact that the election was free and fair, because Karen and I and many others knocked so many doors all over this state and canvassed and asked questions and found person after person, household after household, nursing homes where people said, no, I did not vote, but you had a mail-in ballot cast for you. Okay, there's people living at this address who voted in the 2020 election. You're telling me they don't live here. Yes, I'm telling you they don't live here. Back to our regularly scheduled programming.
David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back to this historic ABC News presidential debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try to get it.
Funny.
That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's. Where is our president?
Truth.
We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
They
here,
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war? Yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment,
Get
but
ready
also
for the emotional
as Commander in
response.
Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin? And would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president, you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually
finance foreign
met
war
with Zelensky
to
a
line her
few
pocket.
days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself.
You did.
Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense.
So we
And
could
because
benefit
of our support,
financially.
because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the
every member of Congress
800,000
to
Polish
profit.
Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator
She wants to
who
keep
would
funded
eat you for
so she can
lunch.
keep her pockets nice.
Vice
and fat.
President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and now, please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times.
But the career politician's telling the truth.
The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not
on lining my
favor
pockets
our
and
enemies
everyone in
because
DC
you
too.
adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's sell them.
Oh, did they take her down? It's that bad. They just went, cut it.
No.
Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war.
No,
And
let's just
as of
give them
today,
$billions
there
of
is
our
not
ammunition
member
and
of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this
restraint I'm having
former
to
president,
import to not
as
call her name
president, invited
is
them to
unmeasurable.
Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President
Yeah, I'm
Harris,
sure
thank
those
you. President
13
Trump, your
families
response
don't
to
feel
her
that
saying
way.
that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, 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 and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal.
Of course you want to move on.
In my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black.
Is that what they do when they know they're losing?
I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight.
I love how
Why
this
do you
is a
believe
debate
it's
between
appropriate
Trump
to
and
weigh in
Kamala
on the
and
racial
ABC.
identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words. So I'm
I
asking.
don't know. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
Here we go.
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently over the course of his career attempted to use race to divide the American people.
Oh, this is getting old.
You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember
this is getting old.
how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned land, he owned buildings.
Oh,
And he
did you
was
don't?
investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first Black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that.
We haven't had a
better
first
than
Black
this.
president.
Want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country.
Right?
We see in each
Leave that
other
up there, Joel.
a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who
Amen,
is
Laura.
constantly
Amen.
trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people.
You get out of
Knowing
their
that
way.
regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president
When
who
you
invests in
deregulate,
Are
those,
you
you
the
get
one
out of
running
their
around
way.
talking
and
about
division.
being black?
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad.
Facts.
And she can't get away with that.
Thank you.
Go
Time's
ahead.
up, Lindsay.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not
let her start
Donald
cackling,
Trump.
please.
And what I
Please
do
let's hear the
offer
cackle.
is a new generation of leadership for our country.
Baloney.
One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction.
I'm the government. I'm here to help.
Pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life
Going
to
give
help
money.
you
The
in
government's
that most
buying you
critical
off.
stage of your child's
Oh, work.
development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home
Let's
buyers.
give you more money.
That's the
government, we're
kind of
gonna buy
conversation
you.
I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name calling. Let's turn the page
Vice
and
President
move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's turn
Trump,
back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
She
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
Well, we'll
fracking
pray
in
for him.
Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump,
no, the
President
former
Trump.
president has
No,
said
I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry.
I
We're
just
going
need
to
to
move on.
respond
Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this
multiple
is
times.
now your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan? And can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be? Never going to be great. Or do I let it rot? And I felt
let
I
it
had
rot,
an obligation, even
another
though
topic.
politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and
Yeah,
so
a
do
little
they.
bit.
They have really
Still
bad ones. The
surrounded by you,
difference
my
is they don't
friend.
get rid of them. But let me just
Yeah.
explain.
Jesus.
I had a
help us.
choice to make.
Say that again.
Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? and I saved it. I did the right thing, but it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now.
Government
But
needs
if
out of healthcare, period.
we come up with something,
Not a
I would
right.
only change it if we come up with something that's
medical
better and
system
less expensive.
is a
And there are
disaster.
concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system.
Oh, Lord.
2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying
here
about
we go.
this stuff.
School shooting. Here it comes.
As it relates to the
Okay.
Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I
That's it.
was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the
Emotion.
United States
Emotion.
Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have
The late, great.
disparaged
Great.
as
Okay.
being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught.
Mr.
He was
Wrong.
an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan.
Because he was
And what the
lining his
Affordable Care
pockets
Act
big.
has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like?
Oh, here we go. Motion.
Remember when an insurance
like
company
that.
could deny if a child had asthma,
Ooh.
if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that
Lord,
for all
help us
people,
all.
understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those
No,
who
it's
can
not.
afford it. And the
Where
plan
is that in the
has to be
Constitution?
to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice
Past is
President
prologue
Harris,
in
thank
terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move
Seriously,
to an
need to take
issue
our
that's
class.
important for a
She
lot
made a
of
mistake.
Teach
Number
an
one,
academy lady.
John McCain fought
to
Obamacare for
Fredericksburg.
10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get.
President
People
Trump-
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance
Yes, she
where
does.
you wait
Preach.
6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank
Amen.
you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax.
It is.
And what
accurate.
we know is that it is very real.
Money
You
laundering
ask
scheme.
anyone
Yes.
who lives in a state who
Prove
has
it.
Those are called
experienced the
seasons. Climate change is called seasons.
home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having
Yeah,
nowhere to
yeah.
go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels.
And our
We
gas
have
prices are still
created
off the
over
chain.
800,000 new
our air is still
manufacturing
polluted.
jobs while I
So-
have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American
What about East
manufacturing and
Palestine,
opening
Ohio?
up auto
Can we talk
plants,
about that?
not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month.
Preach.
They're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable.
I love how he calls
But
them
we're not going to
these
let
people.
that. We'll put tariffs on those
Communist.
cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What
They're
they've
Marxist
done
people.
to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million?
I love this.
This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
He's crushing it. Like crushing it, I think. What do you guys think?
I think he could be doing better, but he's going up against a lunatic. I mean, she literally has nothing to say. All of her policies are Trump policies.
I agree.
Talks about the no tax on tips, and it's literally 3 against 1 right now.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, he's literally taking all of them on. This isn't a fair well, it's probably not a fair election either, but this isn't a fair debate at all. And she's given softball questions that she's not even answering. They're not giving him time to respond. They're cutting off the mics or cutting it short. And she's sitting there like a toddler making faces at him when he's responding and spitting facts at her.
Yep.
This girl.
Because I want to know, you want to talk about the migrants and all this stuff. How about we talk about Laken Riley and some of those other people when she, if you don't remember, a couple of press conferences ago, the only time she's actually said anything, she was saying migrants are the least likely to do a crime here in the United States. Like, I think that's rich coming from her. Or, I also want to know why they had to ask the question about race, because what the hell, excuse my language, does that have to do with my income, my groceries, my taxes? I don't give a damn what color you are. Why did they even bring that up?
Amen. Because they're Marxists, and that's what they do. They divide. That's
because they want to act like we're back in the 1980s where the colored people are sitting on the buses and women.
No, Sarah, we're not going back, Sarah. We're not going back.
No, that's what they want you to think. But President Trump has more black voters and Hispanic voters and voters of all colors. I would probably bet to say that the stupid libtards, the majority of them are white and ignorant.
I love her.
It's disgusting, though, that the way that they are literally tripling up on Trump, and you're 100% right. It is definitely not fair at all. At all.
Wow. You can tell I'm the optimist because I'm like, he's crushing it. She's going down. I'm way more optimistic than you two. But
well, because here's the problem. She's getting a rise out of him. She's staying calm. Yes. She's looking very calm and collected. And she knows exactly what to say to get a rise out of him. But they're not letting him answer questions. So he's looking like he's rambling because they won't even give him time to answer.
See, I don't see. He's spitting facts. He's getting out the truth, which is what
I
needs
don't
to get out.
disagree. I don't disagree. But anytime he actually is trying to answer the question, they're cutting him off. I'm sorry, we don't have time.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. I don't know what happened to our live stream, Joel. Hopefully we're not missing the last comments, but you guys are up for it. We got one of the things I pulled up, the fact check the abortion thing, and then Karen let us know what CanCon said. I actually pulled up a PDF from, and if it starts, Joel, just cut me off and throw the thing back up there. PDF from the Health Department of New York State that says, pursuant to the PHL, for an abortion needed after 24 weeks from the commencement of pregnancy, there must be, quote, an absence of fetal viability, or the abortion is necessary to protect the patient's life or health. So right there, it tells you it's legal after 24 weeks. So she's full of crap, and that's pulled up from the New York Department of Health. So there you go. They're full of it. Lying sacks
So
of crap.
apparently Lindsay David just fact-checked Trump on post-birth abortions because Minnesota allows it. Post-birth abortions.
Post-birth abortions. It's in.
Murder.
Keep scrolling down. It's murder. It's exactly what it is.
Mhm.
Laura, President Trump, tell us how you can save the world. You have 30 seconds. I know, right? Scroll a little bit. Go back down a little bit, Joel. I'm sorry. Yeah, other way up. Okay, right there. Pursuant to PHL, right in the middle, for an abortion needed after 24 weeks. First of all, needed after 24 weeks. You need to murder a baby at 24 weeks. From the commencement of pregnancy, there must be an absence of fetal viability, or the abortion is necessary to protect the patient's life or health. It is right there that for determining whether an abortion is necessary, to protect the health of a patient, the department has identified the following categories of factors which should be considered. See, look, and then they throw everything under the sun, and it's up to the physician, which is fine, except you're allowing the physician to commit murder.
And Lindsay Davis.
All right, let's see
Welcome
this.
back tonight. The
Here
time
it
has
is.
come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country.
You're not
One that
wrong.
is focused on the future,
One to save
and the
one
other
to
that is
destroy.
focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back.
There it
And I
is.
do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families,
You
in
can
what
do
we
that
can
right
do
now.
around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a
could've
break
sworn
and
she
bringing down the
preferred
cost
VP.
of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world.
What about
I will be a
respecting our
president that
American
will protect our
citizens?
fundamental
Right.
rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an
No.
attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the
And
people.
has your life
And I'll
gotten
tell
better?
you, as a
Oh, really?
prosecutor,
All that
I
time.
never asked
You actually
a
care about the
victim
people?
or a
Since
witness,
when?
are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind
Oh,
of
look.
president we need right now.
Emotional
Someone
tears.
who cares about you
No, we're
and
not
is
okay.
not
We're
putting
suffering.
themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs, and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
So David Muir and Lindsay.
And we are here live on ABC with our post.
Right? Do you even want to hear what they're saying? I don't really care.
So look what I just sent. Joel, if you can pull that up, I think this is very, very eye-opening that I just sent. If Joel can pull this up. I got some fact checks on the abortion issue.
Lots of red pills, I would agree.
Let's talk about this for a minute.
Oh, well. Oh, he did get it. Look at you, dude.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about fact checking for a minute, right? So the dark blue, no restriction based on gestational duration. Minnesota, Michigan, Colorado, New Mexico, Oregon, Alaska, New Jersey, Vermont. I mean, right there. Virginia up to the third trimester. Right there. Black and white. I'm sorry.
No
colored.
restrictions based on gestational duration. That means up until birth. And you're being gaslit by people like Kamala Harris by saying, oh, no, that's not true.
And that's ABC News.
There you go.
Posted, see? And that was June 21st of this year.
Wow. So screenshot that. Here's what you can do. So what can you do? We just sat through a very historical moment in a debate between President Trump and vice presidential candidate Kamala Harris. What do you do now? You share this. You get involved somehow in your backyard, because we don't get healthy from the top down, although it will be a blessing and a reprieve. And Lord, grant us mercy. On November 5th, if President Trump is elected and allowed to get back in the White House, it's going to take a massive uprising of people at the local level to fix all the issues. Sarah could talk for days about the criminal justice system and our prison system and how corrupt that is. And we'll probably have her back on our channel sometime to fill us in on that. But it starts at the bottom. If you're not involved somehow, some way locally, get involved, pray about it. Everybody, we're the hands and feet of Jesus. I don't think there's any one thing that anybody needs to do. You need to ask the Lord, where are you being led? Is it the school board? Is it fighting for medical freedom? Is it helping Sarah with her nonprofit? Is it election integrity with us? Is it get out the vote? By the way, there's Sarah's website. Please watch the interview I did with her a couple weeks ago, learn about her story. And if it tugs at your heart, get involved with her. I'm so thankful that I believe the Lord led us to one another at Patriot Academy's Coach Congress in Fredericksburg, Texas, just a few weeks ago, where she went to learn how to write legislation to help the situation that her husband is in, or to fix the situation that her husband is in. And I believe it's a divine appointment, Sarah, and looking forward to us collaborating as much as we possibly can. Yes, Nikki, the fix is absolutely local. I mean, Karen is now the vice chair, or no, not the vice, you were the vice chair. Karen is now the chair of her district's GOP. She sits on the board of the Phyllis Schlafly organization. She's the vice chair of that. She works for Cause of America, living election integrity every day, doing work for Audit the Vote, training hand counters. I mean, our lives have been completely upended, and not necessarily in a good way, not necessarily in a bad way. We're just serving our country. And hopefully all three of us can be an inspiration to you that are watching to get involved somehow, because it's the only way really back to a constitutional republic, not a democracy. Don't even get me started. If you've never taken one of Patriot Academy's classes before, I am hosting Constitution Alive 6 weeks, all via Zoom, starting September the 26th on Thursday nights. We're going to go through the election. So Lord only knows what November brings, but we're going to stay connected. I stuck the link in the chat. If you've never taken it before, or if you just want to come on back and take it again and fellowship with like-minded people, we call our after party Patriots Anonymous. It's our weekly dose of conservative encouragement, because I think that's one of the biggest battles we're having out there, and we're going to have over the next 55 days, is just keeping each other emotionally stable enough to handle what it is we're going to have to walk through. Thank you, Jess, for people in the chat saying that it's a great class. The link is in there. Yes, Liberty Lion working the polls, poll watching, poll working. We need to get out the vote. I'm not competing with getting out the vote organizations. I'm not arguing over mail-in ballots and early voting because it's a bunch of junk to divide us. We need them both. We have to vote, but we also need people like us that are on the ground that know how vulnerable the systems are, so that we can maximize transparency and mitigate the cheat. Because if you think they're not going to try to steal another election, think again. So if the tug is on your heart to give to an election integrity cause, especially in Pennsylvania, you couldn't give to a better one than us at Audit the Vote. So your donations will be well spent. We're sending formal letters to every nursing home facility and assisted living, outlining the law so they know how to protect the vulnerable voters, not steal their votes. Karen is traveling the state hand counting. We're doing a bunch of different things that we can't really talk about publicly that need funded, that I can't go on camera and say, hey, give to us for X, Y, and Z. We can talk offline about those types of things. So please consider, again, if your heart is tugging towards election integrity, go to auditthevotepA.com/donations and consider giving either a one-time donation or becoming a regular monthly supporter, because this fight is far from over. And if Karen and I have proven anything over the last 4 years, it's that we're not quitters. And so getting back to secure, fair, free, transparent elections is going to take a long time, and we're in it for the long haul. So Sarah, let's deconstruct a little bit. People are probably tired. I don't know about you guys. I thought I was going to have a ton of energy. I was getting so fired up, but then when the adrenaline like dies down, I end up like, oh, okay. So why don't you talk? I see you stuck free speech defender in there, or whatever's on your heart. Just let her rip.
I want people to know that currently we have 4 American citizen families that are currently in federal trial in Texas right now, not only for their right for free speech, but for our rights for free speech. They're currently being sued by the Biden administration for emotional damage. There's no criminal charges. It's nothing except for emotional damage for flying a Trump flag outside of a Biden bus in 2020. And that is what is at stake right now. It's not just about January 6th. It's not just about the things that were talked about. Sorry, I had to throw a shoe at my dog. He can't hear me. He's deaf. But see, we're raw and real here, but it's not just about us. It's not about, I saw in the comments that abortion's not a hill to die on. Find what your hill to die on is, because as they had mentioned, Kamala tried to say that, he's going against the Constitution. He's the only candidate that is trying to reinstate the things that our founding fathers put into place, because it's our right to free speech. It's our right to bear arms. I would like to see her weapon collection that she says she has, because I don't believe it. Honestly, because they are going to try to come take our Second Amendment away from us, because once they take it away from us, they can dissolve all of our other constitutional rights. Look what's happening overseas right now in the UK. They are not allowed to post anything that goes against their government, and they're throwing them into jail because they don't have a Second Amendment. That is why we left them left what tyranny was over there, and now it is happening to us. So I encourage every single person, whether it's election integrity, whether it's still with COVID going on and trying to get somewhat justice for individuals losing their lives, having to get forced on vaccines, wearing masks, businesses closing down, whether it's our border and the human trafficking, child trafficking that is going across our border as we speak, whether it's January 6th, the indoctrination of kids, there is something that you can find that you can relate to, that you can fight, because this is, I'm telling you right now, this is a bigger war than even what we could see of World War III. This is a battle of good versus evil, but we are fighting, it's a war of good versus evil, but we have little battles along the way that we must fight, because we are losing on every front if we continue to sit on our couch, watch this debate, go talk about it at work tomorrow, and then do nothing about it 2 days from now. It's a matter of finding whatever the Lord puts on your heart, whether it's financials. Listen, people either have money or they have time. It's one or the other, but you must get involved in a local level. I can tell you right now, in the county that I live in, Tennessee, there's an NGO facility. I bet you there's an NGO facility in the county that you live in. Start doing your research. Start talking to people that are knowledgeable, not just that hold a political title, but people that are knowledgeable in your counties. Go speak to your constitutional sheriffs and ask them, hey, what happens if the FBI tries to come into our county? Because I can tell you, I went and talked to a sheriff in Utah, and he said, I am putting one of my police officers and I'm putting a rancher at every entrance into my county. And the FBI is not welcome. They are protected. The constitutional sheriffs in general, whether they're constitutional or not, hold more power than the sitting president of the United States in their county. That's who you need to get behind, is your sheriff, and let them know that you are counting on them to do the right thing to protect you and your family, because they are coming after us. They are absolutely destroying America right in front of our eyes. And it's a matter of the citizens getting involved. We can no longer be the silent majority and hide behind our keyboards and act like we're some keyboard warrior, because they are coming to do pre-dawn raids on our house. They're coming to take our weapons. They are coming to kill us at the end of the day if we stand up and question them for what they are doing. These people in power are absolutely evil. And this is the last stand in American history. If we don't take it back, there will be no America.
Well said, my friend. Well said. Oh my gosh. I'm going to read something to you really quickly. I'll Karen chime in with her thoughts. This is a fight for the long haul. Here's a quote from Patrick Henry talking to a guy named Richard Price, who I don't know who that is. I have to look that up. September 27th, the year 1785. This is our mantra moving forward. This is our marching orders, patriots. The cause of liberty, like most other good causes, will have its difficulties and sometimes its persecutions to struggle with. It has advanced more rapidly in this than other countries, but all its objects are not yet attained, and I much doubt whether they ever will be in this or any other terrestrial state. That men should pray and fight for their own freedom, and yet keep others in slavery, is certainly acting a very inconsistent as well as unjust and perhaps impious part. But the history of mankind is filled with instances of human improprieties. The wise and the good never form the majority of any large society, and it seldom happens that their measures are uniformly adopted, or that they can always prevent being overborne themselves by the strong and almost never ceasing union of the wicked and the weak. These circumstances tell us to be patient and moderate those sanguine expectations, which warm and good hearts often mislead even wise heads to entertain on these subjects. All that the best men can do is to persevere in doing their duty to their country, and leave the consequences to him who made it their duty, being neither elated by success, however great, nor discouraged by disappointments, however frequent or mortifying. If you are wavering on November 5th doesn't go the direction we all want it to go, the fight continues. It doesn't stop there, it just gets different. Karen, I will let you share, and then maybe play the trailer for the 1916 Project, that new movie. Anything else that's on your hearts? I think everybody needs to get some rest. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting us. Karen, I'll let you share some thoughts.
I'm going to keep it pretty short and sweet. Here's the thing. We still have the process of being able to go out and vote, right? So when it comes to November, I understand everybody has situations. I understand that you know, like Toni and I may have young kids, right? We homeschool our kids. I get it. I understand that you can't lose your job because prices right now on everything is astronomical. People can't afford to live. I get it. Here's the situation. Take what your problem is, take what your situation is, and make it your reason to get your rusty dusty out and go vote than to sit at home. Don't let it be your excuse. Let it be your reason. Because right now, this is your shot. And I don't care if you use a mail-in ballot, an absentee ballot, whatever the heck you do, you go on election day. Get your rear end and get out and vote.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I'm just going to answer a couple questions in the chat. Barb's asking if I think they're going to debate on Fox. I honestly have no idea. I'm not. Joel's doing a great job. That's again, I'm the optimist. You heard the ladies. They think that he could obviously always could have done better. I think he crushed it. My adrenaline was off the chain, especially when they're talking about stuff that's near and dear to us. But look at Kamala. Is that what that says? My kids call her Poopala. Poopala Harris. The next generation is watching. And by the way, that thing I read, I think about what month is this? Are we in September? It's September of 2020. Karen and I together took Patriot Academy's Constitutional Live class. Before then, I was clueless. I probably wouldn't have even known who Patrick Henry was. Now I'm reading books about him, quoting founding fathers, and it is because of places like Patriot Academy. So if you feel the tug there, they are doing so much to save our republic and restore constitutional freedoms, teaching the rising generation about how to write legislation, how to become a statesman if you do feel led to run for office. How do we take back the 7 mountains of influence that have been completely infiltrated and destroyed by the leftist Marxists? PatriotAcademy.com, they're building a campus there. You can sponsor a brick on the campus, put your own inscription, tons of ways that you can give and get involved with there, especially in Texas. So didn't want to not mention Patriot Academy. If it wasn't for them, Karen and I will tell you, we wouldn't be in the fight for election integrity. I wouldn't have met Sarah. She got tremendous value, I believe, out of the event that she went to coach Congress in August and learned how to write legislation and argue a bill. And this is just priceless, absolutely priceless. What am I missing? Any other questions? Anybody see questions in the chat we missed?
Someone asked to explain NGOs. If you want to know what NGOs are, you need to watch What is Treason. You're going to learn about all of these, what I believe are sleeper cells that are around this nation right now, where these individuals have been bussed, trucked, and planed all over our country. I believe what you're seeing in Aurora, Colorado is going to happen to a lot of the cities around this country. I don't know how much you'll see in the South, but I believe that in cities like Chicago and Philadelphia and New York City, where they are not able to protect themselves, you're going to see what's happening in Aurora is coming for us. I really encourage you to watch What is Treason about the trafficking. It's really going to open your eyes. And it's not only for the trafficking, but for the invasion of what has been going on for the last 4 years, going back even further about how these individuals are acting the way that they are acting. I just encourage people, instead of going to watch a 2-hour movie, go watch a 2-hour documentary and inform yourself, because knowledge is power. And you're able to sit at a table and say, hey, do you know that this is what's currently going on in our county, in our city? And they are just waiting for their orders. I can tell you right now, they are waiting for their orders.
Amen. That's absolutely right. Entertainment, documentaries. That's what's the biggest thing that's changed in our household is our form of entertainment. My husband and I both, we watch documentaries, patriotacademy.tv. If you want to follow along with what they're doing, there's tons of content, really good content for kids in there. My oldest daughter is watching a series they put together called Chasing American Legends, from the Green family kids that traveled the country and studied our different landmarks. It's how they learn history, actually visiting Independence Hall in Philadelphia, where the Declaration of Independence was written and signed. And it's tremendous. It lit in her when she saw kids around her age studying this stuff. I could see it light a fire in her, a small fire, but inspired to want to learn way more than sitting in a classroom and listening to a lecture or even reading a book, is seeing kids her age that are passionate about this stuff. So we got a lot of work to do. I do have hope that the Lord is on the throne and that he will. I don't think he's done with America. I really don't. When you see the people that are out there and the people that have come together over the last 4 years, like Sarah, That's awesome. I mean, we didn't, Sarah, I don't know where you were, if you were political before 2020, but like none of us were connected. None of us existed. Now, at least half of the population isn't even following mainstream media. The fact that we even have people on here that watch the debate through us and listen to us comment about it shows you how much the culture has shifted, how many people have woken up and are getting involved. And that's where, for me, I get the encouragement and the hope. Yes, they're going to try to steal another election, but we have boots on the ground this time that didn't exist the last time, that are knowledgeable with the processes and kind of know what to do when the time comes. And so I hope this has been encouraging to all of you. That visual summary, Joel, is amazing. Look at all the rats. Ooh, that's exactly Mockingbird media that people are awake to now. And there's been a huge shift. So they're going to try the same stuff, but we're on the ground involved, and you guys need to join us and get into the fight. Absolutely. Thank you for the prayers. That's the best thing you can do. Karen and Sarah, if you guys see anything else or you want to share anything else, chime in. And Joel, if you'll queue up the video for the 1916 Project, Seth Gruber's film that comes out in October. Look at all these good documentaries that are coming out. So if you're looking for a family night on a Friday or a Saturday night, rather than what you maybe would have done before the world shut down, COVID hit and they shut down planet Earth, maybe go check out one of these documentaries, because there's plenty of time between now and then. You can fill your Friday and Saturday nights with educating yourself instead of just entertaining yourself. Professional sports, I'm not judging anybody, but I can't stomach it. And my husband every once in a while will want to put something on, and I'm just like, I can't. I know it's a distraction. It's there to pull us off of the mission that the Lord has us on, and I just forget it.
I do want to say something before we close. And as tomorrow is 9/11, I want people to go back to where they were on 9/11 in 2001. And I want you to think of what it felt like on September the 12th and September the 13th and the 14th and the 15th, when America truly band together as one. That is the patriotism that is going to take our country back. When you walked out on the street and they looked you in the eyes and they gave you a hug or they shook your hand, because America was shaken to the core, shook to the core on 9/11. And regardless of the conspiracy theories around that, the Americans rose up. Look at the firefighters that drove from all over the country to New York City. Look at the individuals that came out to look for people to clean up that city. That is what America is truly founded on, that when we are knocked down, we stand up, and we are better and stronger because of that. But we can't forget what America felt like those days and those weeks following it, because we have strayed so far from that. So tomorrow, when you think about those that lost their lives on 9/11 and their families that are still around and the people that are still suffering the effects, remember how you felt following that, how it felt to be an American when the world was watching us, and how we were going to react.
Amen. Well said. Joel, do you have the what is the 1916 Project, if you don't? Oh, he does.
What Christians often don't understand in the culture wars and in the fight for life is that abortion is not just one issue among many. Abortion is almost the linchpin upon which the liberal establishment swings. But what happens when you pull out a linchpin? The door falls off.
It takes a long time to go from a few intellectuals believing some bad ideas to bringing those ideas into the culture more and more and more, until they bear fruit. The answer how we got here is because of the silence and inaction of the church.
Somebody might say, well, you know, Margaret Sanger, she didn't quite know exactly what she was doing. Well, first of all, you're speaking from ignorance, because she wrote about herself and she wrote what her plans were, so much so that she, impressed Adolf Hitler. How do you impress Hitler?
My father walks up to me wearing a BLM shirt, and he says to me, why are you out here fighting a white man's issue? But he was a walking poster child for all things CRT, because in critical race theory, you see racism in all things and at all times. Even when a 6'4", 260-pound black man is trying to save a baby.
We're going to expose and discover who the real Margaret Sanger was, and how her attack and assault against the family in America explains our current culture of death and upside-down world that we're living in today. This is where it all started. It was here that Sanger opened up her first unlicensed, illegal birth control clinic in 1916.
study the past, not just to understand what happened then, but to understand what's happening now.
This is a Leviathan, not cow. It's a fitting place to remember what happens when bad ideas are taken to their logical conclusion.
We bless the holy name of Jesus and we shout, let the baby live. Let the baby live. Let the baby live.
Stop waiting for someone else to grow a righteous culture of life for you and on your family's behalf. It will not happen. If not you, who? If not now, when?
Launching sometime in October. Thank you for reminding me, ladies, that tomorrow is 9/11. Somehow, I don't even know what date it is or day of the week or any of that stuff. So thank you for that reminder. It's a somber day for sure. And just pray for everybody that was affected and that we are going to be victorious in November so we can just crush this garbage that's infiltrated our nation. The 1916 Project is the name of that movie. We'll be talking a lot more about that. Last thoughts. I know I keep saying this, but I'm just watching the chat and making sure if you ladies will stick around just a few minutes after we end, so we powwow a little, find out what we did great, what we could change next time. And Sarah, what maybe you and I's next move is together. I will look forward to that. But yes. Thank you for watching. Anything else, girls?
I'm good.
Good. SarahMcAbee.us. Tons, again, so many things to support. You can't support them all. What tugs at your heart? That's probably where the Lord is leading you to put your time or your money or your efforts. What is tugging at your heart? There's no shortages of places to give. So I hope we were entertaining. I am literally as animated. I'm just my normal self. Joel was texting me saying I'm having a blast watching you. I'm like, this is just, I'm a human cartoon character. I can't help myself. I thought I was gonna have to walk around the back of this shed just to like calm down, but I think I'm going to sleep really good tonight. So thank you guys for watching. I'm sure we will be doing more regular shows like this leading up to the election. Stay in the fight. We got this. Education is key. The fix is local and the Lord is on the throne. Jesus is in control. Good night, you guys.